What's up, everybody? This is John with Archer Film. All right, I am forced to do a second video on weapons, mostly because of the discourse around the movie. Now, first off, I really enjoyed the movie. It was terrifying. The scary moments were scary. The concept was great. Performances were great. I really, really enjoyed it. It's one of the best horror movies I've seen in a very long time. That being said, something left me wanting at the end of it. And I'm going to dive into that right now. So there are going to be spoilers. If you haven't seen Weapons, stop listening right now. So here we go. The witch casting spells for an unknown reason, collecting children, putting people in this weird coma trance is a bad metaphor for alcoholism. And you can't change my mind. So most of the discourse around this movie is based on the filmmaker telling people what it's about. And apparently two things: the grief of him losing his friend and the sudden disappearance in his life, and alcoholism. Well, it failed, in my opinion. The reason? So depending on your level of experience with alcoholism, it may not resonate with you, this movie. I was an alcoholic for about 15 years. 10 were really bad. I didn't experience alcoholic parents, though. And there are thousands of reasons to be an alcoholic. So sometimes it's passed on from parents, childhood trauma, maybe, you sure can't catch it. Like all the metaphors in the movie, the fungus, the parasites, AIDS, you don't catch alcoholism. There's a 50% chance you get it from your family genes, and the other is environmental factors, but you don't catch it like a disease. So that was a horrible metaphor for me. Instead of making it like Magnolia structurally, I think the filmmaker could have stayed with the most interesting character, Justine, but he chose that structure and some really great horror moments instead of a unifying theme. Let me explain something to you film novices out there. If you want to tell a great story, you must have one unifying theme. The more singular your theme is, the more meaning people can extrapolate from that. It's not the other way around. So watching Cregger explain his movie is a cop-out. The greatest filmmakers do not need to explain their movies. It's self-evident in the viewing or in subsequent viewings. I'm going to explain how film works. Sorry if this sounds condescending, but images have meaning intrinsically and through the history of film. Light and color in film have meaning. Sounds have meaning. Events have meaning. All art is imbued with meaning. So let's take music. Minor chords give a sad or melancholy meaning, right? Let's take colors. Colors have psychological feelings behind them. Red, blue, what do those make you think or feel? Anger, sadness. Angles in film, shooting down at a character, inferior. Shooting up, superior. Lighting, bright light in a character's face, knowledge. Look at Seven, dark the whole movie as they unravel the mystery. Then when Detective Mills finally understands, he's out in the bright sunlight. Images have meaning. The meaning must be clear. Not obvious, but clear. Even Ingmar Bergman, who can be a complex filmmaker, makes his movies about something. Watch Wild Strawberries or Through the Glass Darkly or Persona, and you'll get it. Even a film like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which on its surface... Even a film like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which on its surface is a bunch of kids that stumble on a bunch of psychos in rural Texas and they get murdered one by one. But the meaning is these hillbillies all worked at a slaughterhouse, which was now closed down, drawing a line between slaughtering animals and slaughtering humans. And if you study serial killers, there's a link between them, killing animals and eventually turning to humans. The Shining has a lot more complexity to it since Kubrick is a very complex filmmaker, but it is about alcoholism, abuse, and on a broader scale, what happens when a man has no purpose in the world or can't create, and then he turns to drinking. Of course, Kubrick laced in many other themes, Native American slaughter, slavery, racism, but there's enough there to contemplate on many levels. Also, the circular or cyclical nature of alcoholism and violence and abuse, I think, is probably the unifying theme. Watch my video essay on my link between The Shining and Fight Club. I'll bring it to something a little bit more modern, Ari Aster. His films are complex and horrifying, and the more you watch them, the more they pay dividends. They are about something. Horror that just happens to people is scary, like Weapons, but not as meaningful as horror that happens through some fault of that person. That creates a stronger bond in the viewer and the filmmaker. If a witch that just happens along is your metaphor, what is the lesson? It takes responsibility away from the characters and the audience. Like horror at its best feels like a lesson. Alien, the greed of a corporation caused it. Blair Witch, they seek out evidence of the witch against the warnings of the community. 28 days, weeks, years later, testing on animals creates the virus. Bring Her Back, she refuses to accept death. Talk to Me, demon possession as a parlor game. Substance, seeking to be young again. Poltergeist, building on a burial ground. Nightmare on Elm Street, the murder of Freddy. Midsommar, be careful who you choose to be your surrogate family. Exorcist, be careful with witchcraft. Saw, make sure you appreciate your life. So weapons, what is the lesson? And no, not all films need a lesson, but the best ones have it. The ones that transcend the zeitgeist have them. They stick with you long after you've seen them, not because of the horror, but because of the meaning. Modern audiences will claim that art is subjective or it's a matter of perspective. This, to me, is the problem with the internet, social media, modern age. Everyone thinks their individual opinion is valid. It's not. Sure, how you feel about a movie is subjective. Some movies resonate with people for a multitude of reasons. There's nothing wrong with that. But a film's meaning is concrete, or at least it should be. It's set in stone by the filmmaker. It can be difficult to decipher sometimes, like Beau is Afraid or Hateful Eight or I Saw the TV Glow, but the meaning is there. Sometimes I don't get the deeper meaning of a film until second or third viewing. Midsommar is one. And I'm not scared to admit that. I thought about it. I thought about some modern theme and, didn't get the real theme until the second and third time I watched it. Watched German expressionist films, Italian neorealist, French New Wave. They don't spell out their meaning, but it's there. You just have to know how to see it. I love horror movies. From Terrifier to Weapons, it is my favorite genre. But Weapons, although it is great as a horror and is very thoughtful, it would transcend its parts and moments with a unifying theme. You can tell this by multiple viewings. Once you know what will happen and the thrill goes away, there must be something else to hang on to, and theme is that thing. I love a movie that is personal. Nothing worse than the opposite. But there must be something universal in the personal. That is what makes great art. All right, see you in the next video.